Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, we asked the question, what if no CBM this year makes any money? The first two haven't made any money. What if the trend is so over that the general audience simply don't bother anymore? That means not much money for Guardians of the Galaxy. We'll talk about that very shortly, which is the one that has the potential to make the most money this year, especially from the MCU point of view, right? What if the Marvels doesn't make any money? What if the Flash movie totally fails? What if Blue Beetle, which it probably will, fails at the box office? What will that say about CBMs? And what will that say about the trend moving over to gaming? But I actually think it's deeper than that. I think the trend is anything that isn't CBMs. And after we finish talking about CBM movie math, let's call it that, right? Let's have Grace Randolph here in spirit. We're also going to talk about, we're going to pretend I've come from the future and I've told you one day you'll have a 4-hour Justice League movie in your collection. But before you can have that, you're going to see the creator of Buffy recycle that movie into a colour splurge. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at that angle. We're going to be a bit sarcastic as well, so stick around for that. So, what if CBM simply don't make any money this year? So we've had Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania and Shazam Fury of the Gods totally underdeliver at the box office. Now we can officially call Shazam Fury of the Gods an official flop. I don't think we can say that of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, although I don't know the exact box office. It did get to 500 million, didn't it? 600 million, something like that. I don't know. So it's still okay. And it's Ant-Man after all. Ant-Man is literally the lowest grossing character, I think, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for Marvel Studios. Again, I could be wrong. But this movie should have actually peaked around $1 billion. Why? Because a few years ago, let's pretend a few years ago, right, when we're doing the Infinity Saga, right, and I said to you, right, we're doing an Ant-Man movie, right, pretend Thanos had never been in any other MCU movie, right, pretend we never first saw him in the first Avengers movie, and I'm saying to you, breaking news, right, Thanos is going to appear in the first Ant-Man movie, in the new Ant-Man movie, right? What's going to happen? $1 billion in the bank, everyone's excited. It's a different situation, right? So why is it when we're introducing, Kang the Conqueror into an Ant-Man movie, why didn't anyone go and see this movie? Why wasn't the general audience as excited for this as they were for Infinity War and Endgame, or the first Avengers, or even Avengers Age of Ultron? A movie I quite like, by the way. Why weren't they motivated? They were pushing this as Kang's movie. They literally made a movie that underdevelops Ant-Man, the Wasp, the Daughter, everything, right? It underdevelops everything apart from Kang the Conqueror. This isn't an Ant-Man movie. This is a Kang the Conqueror movie. This is the MCU's first villain movie, right? They were pushing this as a Kang the Conqueror movie, basically. Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing, right? Oh my God, what an actor. He's everywhere. He's amazing. We're so lucky to have him, right? So why weren't people convinced about this? This is the season premiere, basically, of Phase 5. This is an introduction of a brand new villain. So why didn't people go? People are weary and worn out by Hollywood. They're worn out by what's going on in entertainment. But in terms of the CBM Jania, I think general audiences have genuinely had enough, because there's no genuine excuse why people weren't excited to see Kang the Conqueror on movie screens. It's like I always ask the question, you all knew Superman was going to be in a post-credit scene in Black Adam. Why didn't you go and watch the movie? I mean, reason one, you could just see it on the internet. It was everywhere, but there wasn't enough excitement for that situation. But why? Why? That's the question I'm asking today. Because the trend is over? Because DC's a mess? DC's different to Marvel. When you're talking about Marvel, it's been a very popular franchise. So why doesn't it continue to be a popular franchise? What's happened? What's gone wrong? And so we go to Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, to be fair to Shazam, the first movie didn't do good business either. Now, Black Adam, I think, made about 100 million more than the first Shazam, and basically doubled or even trebled the box office of Fury of the Gods, the Shazam sequel. So there was never that much interest in Zachary Levi as the character. Zachary Levi isn't a big pull. He isn't really a movie star. He wasn't great casting. He's a solid pro. He's a solid actor and all of that. But he was never going to sucker people in to watch this because Shazam was the big introduction to the colour, the colour-coded DCEU. Not like that dark Snyderverse. We've got bright colours and gags. It's amazing, actually, that they deleted this beautiful scene between Zachary Levi and Dame Helen Mirren, after she turns good. And it's a beautiful, compelling, like tear-jerky scene. And they cut it out. They cut out good scenes like that so they could fit in more gags. And it's just hilarious at this point. So when I ask the question, why aren't people going to watch CBMs anymore? I think phase 4 of the MCU has kind of changed people's mentalities to CBMs. But also, we're in a kind of state now where we're getting movies being made from first drafts of scripts with very poor CGI. Now, poor CGI has been a theme here on Movies TV Mad recently. Yesterday, we were discussing that horrible close-up shot of Batfleck, and it is horrible. We can defend it, they're still in post-production. It shouldn't be that bad a couple of months out of release. Let's be honest about it. Basically, CBMs have become lazy. And I think unless you're going to see the Penguin movie, but the Penguin series, or Joker 2, or the Batman 2, you ain't going to get any real quality. Only auteurs can save the CBM. And it's going to be interesting now that we're jumping to James Gunn's universe, if that actually ever happens. If we ever start production of Superman Legacy, it'll be interesting if something doesn't change there as well. Will there be more quality in James Gunn's DC universe? Will there be interest in James Gunn's DC universe? That's going to be an interesting thing. Do general audiences generally trust James Gunn? Well, that's an interesting thing. And even though we are a DC show, we should talk about the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because that is being pacing around 133 million on its opening weekend. So that's an interesting one, right? I'm assuming they're talking about a global box office and not domestic. But I don't know if it's a domestic or a global. I mean, obviously, 133 is solid domestically. I don't know. But I think the issue is whether it's domestic or global, because there's a big difference in it. If it's a box office for one country, let's just say it's global, right? I think that 133 million, whether it's global or domestic, I don't know, will dwindle down to around 100 million, 110 million. So I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is looking to make record-breaking money. It's very interesting when you look at Mario. Mario made 80 million domestically on its second weekend. I thought because of the huge 5-day opening, it would drop at least by 55 60%, which still wouldn't be the end of the world. But this film had a 45% drop, bruvs. 45% fucking drop. That's outrageous. That's an 80 million domestic weekend. That's fucking insane. It's now just made just under 700 million. It looks like it's going to cruise to $1 billion. And we were discussing this for weeks before its release. Can this movie make $1 billion? As I said earlier, this is a movie that, has played it safe. It's very Force Awakens in that way. I hope we don't get a sequel like The Last Jedi. Hopefully they know what they're doing, because success can lead people to different directions, to bad directions. But it's amazing. That says something about Nintendo. That Nintendo are a trend on their own. That gaming is a trend now in movies. People are starting to be interested in gaming movies as well, especially when they're done well. I think what's interesting is gaming movies for kids, like kind of directed at kids, are doing very well. Sonic and Sonic 2 did very well. Not like the Mario box office, right? But still, they're very good, entertaining movies. They work and they've made good money. So that's a fact. But the Mario money for a little animated movie that plays it safe is insane. It shows you how popular Nintendo is. I don't think comic book movies will reach that kind of box office anymore. And it's amazing, especially if we look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how any old shit with that logo on it was making big money. So that's why I'm asking the question, why, when you're introducing Kang the Conqueror into your brand new kind of story arc of the MCU, why didn't people go? Why weren't people interested? Phase 4 hurt the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's no question about it. I'm a big fan of Spider-Man No Way Home. I did a review on this very channel. I was actually surprised how much it focused on Tom Holland's Peter Parker, and Spider-Man, I was worried that they were going to over-focus on Tobey and Andrew just to bring in the money. But they weren't, they weren't introduced to the film to like the third act. And it was amazing, really, because it works, because you see the darker side of Spider-Man. You see him angry because his Aunt May was murdered. He's willing to kill someone. So we see a very different version of Peter. So if we talk about Phase 4, and we talk about that movie, it was a very well made, very well written movie. And the future is bright for Spider-Man because Sony are in charge. And I don't know how much Feige has to do with all of that. Obviously, he's involved. Clearly, it's a team effort. So we go from Spider-Man No Way Home, a $2 billion grossing movie, and we're just coming out of COVID after that. So it was an amazing box office, but it's an amazing CBM. I think it's a great CBM. Do I think it's as good as Raimi's Spider-Man movies, the peak ones? No. Do I think it's as well made as Singers X and X2? No. Right? So I'm not going to that level, but I'm saying it's a very well-made movie, considering it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then we go to Black Widow and Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings. But even though the messaging in Shang-Chi and, the devaluing of the male psyche in Shang-Chi is bad, I admit, I still kind of thought it was a solid movie, a solid Marvel movie. But then it just got worse and worse. The D+ shows were very diluted. It was bad, and I think that was what done the real damage. And the reason I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Cinematic Universe in terms of box office, because I think it's important to look at what's going on. Because as I say, Marvel could just put their brand on something and it sold, whether it was good or bad. Even the reviews were blanketly good, even when the movies were bad. Now, people are looking at that franchise and they're not inspired to support it. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be an interesting test case, right? So, 133 million isn't disastrous, but it isn't great either for a movie that's going to deliver a conclusion to, a bunch of characters that a lot of people love. I can't imagine this movie not making good money from the outside looking in. But what's happened is with the CBM, the box office has become somewhat unpredictable. And so it's amazing to me when I think about like how the transfer of power has changed from CBMs to gaming movies. It's amazing. But we must remember, like Mario is really the only one that's breaking records. Sonic did well. Both Sonic movies did well, but not on the level of Mario. So we must be careful not to just jump on the bandwagon and say, well, it's all about gaming now. But it looks like it's mostly about gaming. I think people now just want to be entertained. They're tired of the message. They're tired of Marvel. Marvel oversaturated the market. I don't think the market was oversaturated with CBMs. I think it was oversaturated with Marvel. I think people were more than happy to see 3 or 4 Marvel movies a year, but when you're getting more content on D+, as well as the movies, you're oversaturating the market. And the more sometimes kind of less is more. And when you're making more doesn't mean better. And sometimes people think more is better. But when the quality goes down, as it did on D+. Now, personally, I really enjoyed, what's her name? The woman, the one who went mad in Doctor Strange, WandaVision. I really enjoyed WandaVision. I thought it was a well-structured series. Now, there were issues there, and you could see the Marvel kind of, plumping for the female and making excuses for Wanda's, psychotic behaviour and all of that. But I think, as a whole, I enjoyed that series. And at least they tried to do something different, right? And like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, even though, the message was there, I kind of enjoyed it. It was okay. It worked to a point. Now, Loki, I think Loki isn't a character. Loki's a bit like Boba Fett. He's good in like fits and starts, but I think if you have too much of Loki, he starts to get boring. What they tried to do with Loki in this series is make him, this hero. Instead of like this villain, this interesting, lovable rogue, because, no one can be flawed. It's either going to be one way or the other. And we saw what they did. There was a bait and switch in that series. So it started to, D+ Marvel started to get worse and worse and worse, and the message was getting fed in. This is why we went from Phase 4, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania didn't kind of inspire people. Basically, you got to listen to your audience. And the thing about Hollywood is they don't listen to their audiences. And I think that's the problem. I mean, they still haven't apologized for Justice League. That's the thing. They'll never admit they made a mistake there. And that's what I want to talk about now as well. We've spoken about box office. We've asked, will CBMs make real money this year? I have my doubts. Every CBM coming out could flop in the domestic and global box office. Now let's imagine I've just come from the future and I've said to you, one day in your collection, you're going to have a 4-hour Justice League movie in your collection. But first, not so fast. First, they will attempt to deny the existence of said movie, and they will try and recycle it as a 2-hour movie written and directed by the creator of Buffy and Angel. You're thinking, wow, Buffy and Angel, I love that show, right? That's what you're thinking, right? Not so fast, because you're not going to believe me, but when we go to 20 years in the future, Joss Whedon is reviled as somewhat of a bully and not a nice person. And he's been forced, in 20 years in the future, he's been forced out of the industry because of all these accusations. In fact, we heard one of his child stars apparently couldn't even be left in the same room with him. So yeah, it's unbelievable. This is what happens 20 years in the future, right? That's crazy, right? But eventually you will get a 4-hour Justice League movie in your collection, right? So imagine I've come from the future, I've told you that. You would fucking put me either in Belle Reve or Arkham fucking Asylum, right? But this is a fact. It's amazing to me that Justice League actually exists It's a real living and breathing movie. I mean, look, I can take elements of that film and say, well, it's okay, right? But most of that movie is a fucking disgrace. Steppenwolf's fucking helmet, right? Apparently he was too scary. Zack made him too scary. So they had to make him more kid-friendly. That's not kid-friendly. That's fucking banter-friendly. I mean, Steppenwolf is a fucking disgrace in that film. It's embarrassing. Now, I do like the tease in the post-credit scene about the Flash and Superman having a race. I do like the dialogue between Ezra and Henry in that moment. And the problem is we never actually saw a proper race. At least show us the bloody race, right? That would have been awesome. I want to see it. Maybe James Gunn will actually give us a Flash and Superman race. Mick, what are you talking about? Like he's going to give like the fans anything they want to see. Let's not forget where we are today. And so it's just the fact that Justice League exists is beyond me. There's been a turn of, there's been a kind of a paradigm shift in Hollywood where the fans have got power now. They can influence what happens, right? And we can influence it a lot more than we think because they want you to think. This is why they accuse you of being a toxic fan and they call you a man baby because they're panicking. This is why you got Rolling Stones insulting fans over downvoting the Marvels trailer, right? Because it's panic. This is coming directly from the studio. Because imagine being Marvel right now, having all these big plans for the cinematic universe, but potentially people not coming in to see your movies, which is a realistic situation that we've been talking about. So this is what happened with kind of the release the Snyder Cut campaign. I mean, on the opening weekend when the movie flopped, I started hearing whispers of the Snyder Cut 3 or 4 days later. And it was very early where we got that leaked footage of the Flash saving Iris. And that shot, even that previous shot that we saw had better VFX and CGI than anything in Justice League. Justice League was a fucking embarrassment. And if you didn't notice that there was a betrayal in that movie when you saw it, then you must have watched it with your eyes closed. And I'm not trying to insult anyone. It was pretty obvious. I came out of that movie fucking depressed. I couldn't believe it. So the fact that that movie actually exists and this studio have never apologized for it is a disgrace in itself. They never apologized. This is why they tried to deny the existence of the Snyder Cut, because the Snyder Cut actually exposed them for what they are, right? Why is it after there was divisive conversations, a divisive reaction to Batman versus Superman, why didn't they just say, we're starting again? When Hamada came in, why didn't they say, let's start again? When James Gunn came in, why isn't he doing a clean reboot? Why is he using the Flash movie to reset the timeline? In other words, they're rebranding the DCEU. DCU is the DCEU. That's what it is. It's the same thing in a new so-called timeline where James Gunn's Suicide Squad universe still exists, right? Will anything else from the DCEU exist? We'll have to wait and see. We know that Henry Cavill's Superman won't exist. It looks like Ben Affleck's Batman won't exist. So it's only something, basically James Gunn gets to decide what stays and what goes. It'll be interesting. Will Blue Beetle be part of the new timeline? Will Zachary Levi's Shazam be part of the new timeline? Who knows? It will be interesting if these shitty things stay in, considering Shazam is literally a cinematic flop. So if he's part of the new timeline and Henry Cavill isn't, that's going to make fans even more kind of frustrated and angry. We'll have to see what happens there. But for me, the fact that a 4-hour Justice League movie exists is a beautiful thing, because there's one thing knowing Justice League exists, and there's another thing knowing that there's a 4-hour Justice League movie that exists. And this Justice League movie, Snyder's Justice League movie, is a thing of beauty. It genuinely is. I've never seen a movie structured in this way. It doesn't feel 4 hours. It feels less than 4 hours. but it's beautiful. One of the most beautiful moments of the movie are the end credits when it says "For Autumn," right? Because we all know what that means. You know, that's a very serious dedication, and the film is personal for Zack Snyder. So it was a very interesting situation. We've never really had a situation in cinema like this before, and there'll never be something like the Snyder Cut again. It was insane. Listen, as insane as it is that Justice League exists, it's as insane that Zack Snyder's Justice League exists. It's mad. They let him put together a 4-hour movie with beautiful VFX, beautiful storytelling. I will challenge anyone to ever make a Justice League movie that rivals this. And maybe James Gunn's also thought about this and thought, maybe we should stay away from the Justice League for now. Because it's bad enough that he's going to have to recast Superman and come up with the perfect Superman casting, or he's going to have the memory of Henry Cavill, like, you know, rubbed in front of him for till the end of time. That man's legacy will be used against James Gunn forever. It was basically he shot himself in the foot by removing Cavill. So you better be casting the most amazing actor as Superman, or you're screwed, mate. Same with Justice League. This Justice League movie is so unique. I feel sorry for anyone who's going to be tasked with making another Justice League movie. So a lot of you are saying, why hasn't the Justice League been announced? We want a Justice League movie. I don't think you're going to get one anytime soon. Of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong about that. But the way I look at it is, I just don't see how, you know, when Zack Snyder has made a film where, you know, the kind of family members of the people who or the man who invented Darkseid is complimenting Zack Snyder, when, you know, kind of a very famous old critic who's not with us anymore, his site is saying it's one of the best movies they've ever seen as well, then I would say good luck to anyone who's attempting to make a new Justice League movie. Because if there was never a Justice League movie, if there was never a Zack Snyder's Justice League, you could get away with doing kind of a kind of condensed Justice League movie. Smiles, bright colours, gags, basically like the first Avengers movie, right? But not as good. You could probably get away with that. Now that the Snyder Cut exists, it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. And so it's going to be interesting what happens there. If there will be a Justice League movie, if they bother doing a Justice League movie, because clearly all these characters are going to exist in James Gunn's world. Plastic Man, Green Arrow, Superman, Batman. Wonder Woman's interesting because she hasn't had a movie announced, and she's just, her world is being kind of built up, right, in an HBO Max show, but we don't, you know, where is she? Who's going to play her? Is it still Gal? Is it going to be somebody else? We don't know. But in the first part of the slate, they never announced a Justice League movie. So it's going to be interesting when they announce part 2 of Gods and Monsters, maybe at CinemaCon, right? Because that's where they're showing the Flash movie, and that's when they're going to make the announcements for part 2 of Gods and Monsters. So what's on part 2 of Gods and Monsters is going to be very interesting. And I think people will focus on, because that's what people are like today, will focus on what's not on that slate. So it's going to be very, very interesting what James puts on part 2 of the Gods and Monsters slate as well. And so, but James Gunn has never mentioned the Justice League. He's hinted about so many other things, but not the Justice League. So that's interesting. Will there be a Justice League movie in part 2 of the Gods and Monsters announcements? Very interesting, because people are going to lose their shit if there isn't a Wonder Woman movie, if there isn't a Green Lantern movie, if there isn't a Justice League movie. I know this because people talk to me because of my platform here on YouTube, because of my @MoviesTVMad Twitter account. People talk to me. I know what the fans want. I'm not telling you what I want. Now, yes, I agree with them. I want a Green Lantern movie. I want a Wonder Woman movie. And yes, I would like to see another Justice League movie. I just don't know how you're going to succeed at a Justice League movie when people are comparing it to a work of art. This has been Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, and yes, smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. So, goodbye from me. Have a lovely rest of your day. Hope you enjoy your Monday. It's always great to talk to you about entertainment and DC. Keep it movies TV mad. Goodbye for now.